Watch is a unique live investigation of the supernatural. It contains material which some viewers may find to be disturbing.
Back to Angel City PD, may I see your stats?
Mostly machine. You're not really human anymore, are you?
Just remember, in order to get there, we actually have to get there. What does katana mean? It means Japanese sword.
There's a storm coming. A storm the likes that you've never seen before.
Tell me again how it feels when you get really frightened.
I'm sick and tired of dressing up like a whore and working on these two-bit cases.
Heroes, the Earth people are getting closer to that which we fear.
Hello and welcome to what I'm calling episode 0 for the B-Movie Binge podcast, a podcast where I talk about really obscure films, B-movies, if you will. And when I say B-movies, I don't necessarily always mean so bad it's good. Like, I mean, Evil Dead might be considered, it is considered a B-movie by most. But a lot of the films I'll be discussing, and certainly we will be discussing films that are objectively bad, but they're fun to watch. And I'll probably eventually get to movies that are so bad they're just bad because, you know, why not? But for B-Movie Binge, I imagine covering films that would have come out in the 70s, 80s, or 90s that were straight to DVD or straight to VHS. Stuff that you would typically just find in Blockbuster, and you'd have to rent it and take it home, and that's how the films would make their budget back. And they'd have these really cool VHS covers. Well, now a lot of these films, you can discover them through free apps like Tubi or Pluto TV. And in a lot of cases, some of them are even available on YouTube just to watch for free. A goldmine of obscure films that a lot of people wouldn't know about. And a lot of these older films feature stars, like people that would go on to become Oscar winners in a lot of cases in these very low budget films. So I'm looking forward to doing this. You know, I've had this idea for a while, but I was hesitant to throw my hat into the podcasting ring because it feels like everybody and their mom is doing a podcast of some sort, especially about movies. But I think that as far as like B-movies, it's an untapped well. Not that there isn't podcasts that discuss B-movies, but you can find all sorts of podcasts talking about the latest Marvel movie, the latest big budget movie, whether they're for it or against it, whatever. There's so many choices and a lot of really great people doing it. So I wanted to do something that I was really passionate about, and I think when it comes to these films, there is definitely something to talk about, because in a lot of cases, I think with the lower budget comes bigger choices. And what I mean by that is stunts, for example, and especially older karate movies and action movies were a lot bolder because, I mean, they probably didn't have the studio watching over their shoulders 24/7. And some of the films that I have picked out for the first couple episodes will definitely reflect that. So the idea here is for me to do, I'm committed to do, 5 to 6 episodes to see how I like doing this. And bear with me, I haven't done podcasting on my own in quite a while. I did do the Writing Out Cancer podcast, which was a lot of fun, but I have not done a regular podcast ever. It's similar to vlogging about movies, except it'll be a little bit more casual. I won't have to edit quite as much, I hope. I won't have to worry about how I look or a cat in the background. I mean, I'm sure there will still be cat noises in the background, but I digress. So a little bit about me. for people that don't know who I am, which is probably most people, I graduated from Greenland in 2011. I went to Clark State College for business management, and I really wasn't happy doing that. I had been passionate about film pretty much since the age of 13, when my dad introduced me to the Blair Witch Project and the Evil Dead trilogy, specifically Evil Dead 1 and 2, because until then, I just assumed that movies were just made by rich people. Like, I didn't really see everyday people like myself making movies. And then Evil Dead and Blair Witch changed everything, because I mean, Evil Dead was literally a college film, and then you had the Blair Witch Project, which was low budget as hell. So I think that those movies really set me on a path. So during high school, I watched as many horror movies as I could, and that really set me on a path to getting into filmmaking. And then eventually I got into writing, and I started writing books based off concepts that I would have loved to put to film, but of course I just didn't have the budget to do so. And I wrote 8 books. I took a break after the pandemic hit, and I really wasn't able to tour that much with my books, and which stinks because 2019 was my best year. Like, I about broke even, which is great for a self-published author. This sort of thing is definitely more of a marathon than a race, and I discovered that rather quickly. And I tried to get back into book signings in 2021 and 2022, and it just wasn't the same. And I was still writing, and I still do write, but not near the pace that I was before. And I think that my interests have shifted a little bit back towards film. So, I've wanted to do something related to film for quite some time. And I think this podcast will be a way to do it. So the first 5 episodes, not including this one, will cover the Trancers and Nemesis movie series. So the next episode will be about Trancers 1 and Nemesis 1, and then so on and so forth. I'll cover each sequel. And then if I decide I really dig doing this podcast, and I'll see what the response is, I'll keep at it. There's plenty of movies for me to pick from that I could probably pretty much do something like this until the day that I die, because there are still B movies and so bad it's good movies being released to this day, and will be continued to be released, because there's assholes like me that enjoy that sort of thing. And eventually I would like to have guests, friends, family. I was on my buddy Roy Stiffy's podcast, Roy's Rants, and we've discussed films, and I would highly recommend checking him out. He's a good guy, really talented artist, and I look forward to discussing and putting my friends and potentially hopefully my family too through these very unique films. And like I alluded to earlier, this isn't something that I've done a lot. I did do a radio show in high school and middle school, and that was about Marvel movies, oddly enough, because there wasn't necessarily 4 or 5 of them coming out every year, and they weren't all connected either. You had the Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and the X-Men movies, which were all kind of in their own little universe. So I did a radio show about trailers and reacting to them, and that was a lot of fun. But it's a unique challenge attempting to do this mostly on my own. Like, in preparation for this, I downloaded all sorts of podcasts and even listened to late night conservative radio, which if you ever have the chance to listen to like coast to coast after like midnight or so, that's when it becomes the most fun. Like I don't care for political podcasts. I'm not a political person, but I really liked listening to like stuff about aliens or the people that would just call in and tell their stories about Bigfoot, ghosts, I mean, all sorts of stuff. Very, very, very fun to listen to. But I took a lot of notes on late night radio and other podcasts, not even just movie podcasts. Like I listened to Better Together, which is like a self-help podcast, just to kind of get an idea of what other people are doing and what I liked and what I disliked about the different casts, to sort of see what works and see how I could bring my own energy to it, because I didn't want to just repeat what everybody else is doing, because that's how you get lost in the weeds, in my opinion. That's how it's just, I mean, I imagine it's probably like getting recognized on YouTube, where it's difficult to find an audience. But for me, it's just going to be doing something fun, and I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible. So I think for each episode, what the structure is going to be is I'll start off with the episode sort of very casually, and discuss some movie news. And when I say movie news, I don't mean that I will be discussing like for example, Creed 3 just came out. Like I wouldn't just necessarily discuss something like that. Instead, I would be discussing films that are typically going straight to DVD, or the newest Asylum film, you know, adding to more discussion to the obscure stuff and the ridiculous and other indie projects. So each episode will start off with something like that, and then I will go into the two movies I want to discuss. Most of the time it'll be two movies. I guess if I'm feeling low energy that week, I might just do one, you know, after I'm done with the Trancers and Nemesis series. And then I'll break up each movie by, in the middle, I'll be doing like a interactive portion where I read and respond to comments, depending on how the comment flow is. Like if, for example, let's say hypothetically, if this does blow up, which would be awesome, and there's 150 comments, obviously I can't answer 150 people, but I think starting out, I will definitely be able to answer each and every comment if you guys are wanting to interact with me. And there'll be movie trivia too. Like I'll have movie trivia during the halfway point, and it'll be mostly obscure stuff, but occasionally I might throw in some stuff that most people are familiar with. And you know, don't cheat and look on your phones if it's something that you know, and a fact that you've just been holding on to. You know, who knows? You might get lucky. But yeah, and I am open to constructive criticism. Things like saying that my voice sucks doesn't really help, because I can't really change that. You know, I just turned 31, so I think I'm stuck in how I sound. However, if somebody's like, hey, you say too much, or hey, you need to not talk, you're talking too fast or talking too slow, there's too many awkward pauses, let me know, because I would like to get good at this. I feel like if people are deciding to take me with them on either their drive or listen to me at work or wherever while they're making their morning coffee, whatever it may be, you know, I want it to be worth their while. Doesn't necessarily need to be hugely professional, but I want it to be an enjoyable listening experience. So any criticism, tips, or concerns that you would like to voice, please let me know in the comments. And as far as Where else you can listen besides YouTube, I'm going to be figuring that out as I go. YouTube's going to be the big one for now, but eventually I'll probably branch out to adding to Spotify, Apple, probably Amazon as well. That way I can reach as many people as possible. And we'll kind of just go from there. So like I said, I'm starting off with Nemesis and the Trancers. I almost said Transmorphers. we'll eventually, I would like to get to Transmorphers, but we're doing Trancers and Nemesis. So I'm very much looking forward to talking about those. Comment below and let me know if you have any certain requests. I certainly would love to hear what movies I could cover in the future. There's a lot of potential to really cover some obscure and painfully bad stuff, and I'm here for it. I think what you're going to discover is that I have a very unique fascination with this sort of stuff. And I think like a great example is The Room, Tommy Wiseau's The Room, because this guy had such a drive to make movies, and despite the fact that he failed so poorly on a technical and script level, like if you haven't seen The Room, it's difficult to sit through. I've sat through it twice, but just watch, like, if you can't handle a really bad movie, I would recommend at the very least checking out a couple of clips on YouTube. You will be blown away, especially by the rooftop scene, which I think is probably the most iconic scene in the film. But the film is endlessly quotable. But I don't know if I consider Tommy Wiseau a failure. He's sort of like Ed Wood, where he is just notorious for being so passionate, but also being not to be mean, but being incompetent as far as being a filmmaker. But I gotta give it to him. Not a lot of people get to make films that are popular, so I commend people like him. And who knows, maybe we will discuss The Room at some point. We will see, because I again, while The Room is so bad it's good, it's been talked about a ton. Whereas like I feel like Trancers and Nemesis, which are objectively better movies than The Room in a lot of ways, are definitely B movies. And I think in the case of Nemesis in particular, there are some parts of it that are so bad it's funny, but there are some parts of it that are legitimately really, really good. And I would say the same thing about Trancers as well. And I haven't gotten to the sequels yet, but obviously we'll be discussing those in the coming weeks. And I'm going to attempt to upload an episode every week. I think this week I'll be uploading 2, because this episode in particular is going to be short, because it's just sort of a, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm planning for the podcast. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for checking this out and being interested. I hope that you listened to the first 5 episodes. And there is going to be spoilers for these movies. Usually I hate spoilers because, I'm going to be talking about them in depth, but it's more of a way for me to sort of convince people to watch them. Like, because that's how I discovered them, was I heard about them through random reviews, and there were important plot points that were discussed, but yet when I watch films like these, I still enjoy them because I get to see the insanity for myself. And I think that's part of the experience. Whereas like if I was talking about Avatar and I just talked about the whole thing from beginning to end, I don't think people would want to listen to that before watching it. Whereas I feel like you can listen to B-Movie Binge and still go watch Trancers and Nemesis and have a good time. and not be pissed that certain things were spoiled for you. There might be occasionally times where I decide to leave something out, like if there's a really good twist ending or a really bad one, I'll not discuss it, so that way the audience can sort of figure it out for themselves and see it for themselves. But yeah, this is going to be a very interesting experience and experiment. So take care, have fun, watch bad movies, because life is way too serious to, watch great movies all the time, because I think that these B movies and so bad is good movies really make you appreciate some of the stuff that Hollywood tends to push out, because I mean, with the way comic book fans in particular complain about some of Phase 4, it's I think it's easy to forget that with comic book movies that we had stuff like Batman and Robin, Fan Four Stick, and Steel with Shaquille O'Neal. We've come a long way since those films, and I hope that in discussing movies through B Movie Binge that you will find a new appreciation for cinema. So take care and goodbye.